The whispers stopped the moment I walked into the gymnasium. 20 years had passed since high school, but the silence felt just as crushing as it did back then. My ex-wife, Vanessa, stood in the center of a circle, her laughter cutting off abruptly as our eyes met. That's when Mr. Donovan, my enigmatic billionaire boss, placed his hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Let's show them what real success looks like, James." If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional journeys that will touch your heart. Your support means everything to us as we continue to bring you these powerful stories of redemption and triumph. I never planned to attend the reunion. As a single dad raising Emma on my own, I barely had time to breathe, let alone revisit the past. But my daughter had other ideas. "Dad, you have to go," Emma insisted, her 14-year-old wisdom somehow surpassing mine. She sat cross-legged on our worn living room couch, her dark hair, so much like mine, pulled back in a messy ponytail. "You can't hide forever." "I'm not hiding," I protested, folding laundry that never seemed to diminish no matter how many loads I did. "I'm busy." "There's a difference." Emma rolled her eyes in that particular teenage way that made me feel simultaneously amused and defensive. "You haven't seen these people in 20 years. Don't you want to show them how well we're doing?" I paused, a pair of her socks in my hands. Were we doing well? Our two-bedroom apartment was clean but modest. My salary covered our needs with little left over for luxuries. Emma never complained, but I knew she noticed when her friends got new phones or went on exotic vacations while we celebrated special occasions with movie nights at home. "We are doing well," I said finally, more to convince myself than her. "But that doesn't mean I need to parade it in front of people who probably won't remember me anyway." Emma's expression softened. She uncurled herself from the couch and came to help with the laundry. "Dad, I know Mom hurt you. But you're amazing, and if you don't go, she wins." She was right. I had been hiding, from my classmates, from Vanessa, from the humiliation of our divorce 5 years ago when she left us for her wealthy colleague. The memory still stung. "You'll never amount to anything, James," she had said, packing her designer luggage while I stood frozen in our bedroom doorway. "I need someone with ambition." The words had cut deeper because part of me feared they were true. I had always been steady rather than spectacular, reliable rather than remarkable. My dreams of becoming an environmental engineer had been set aside when Emma was born, replaced by a series of jobs that paid the bills but never quite fulfilled me. "Fine," I conceded, tossing a towel at Emma's head, making her giggle. "I'll go. But don't expect any dramatic stories." Little did I know how wrong I would be. I glanced at my worn suit in the mirror the night of the reunion. It had seen better days, just like me. At 42, my hair had started graying at the temples, and the lines around my eyes told stories of late nights helping with homework and early mornings making breakfast before rushing to work. I adjusted my tie, the one Emma had given me for Father's Day last year, and tried to summon confidence I didn't feel. "You look handsome, Dad," Emma said from my doorway, her voice sincere despite the slight worry in her eyes. She'd been my cheerleader since she was old enough to talk, always believing in me even when I struggled to believe in myself. "Thanks, kiddo." I kissed the top of her head, grateful that she hadn't yet reached the age where such gestures were embarrassing. "Mrs. Rodriguez will be here in 10 minutes. Homework before TV, and bed by 10, I know," she finished for me. "I'm not a baby." "You'll always be my baby," I replied automatically, our familiar exchange bringing comfort on this night of uncertainty. My job at Donovan Enterprises had been my salvation after the divorce. I started in the mailroom, determined to provide for Emma no matter what. Mr. Donovan, Alexander to the business world, but just Alex to his employees, had noticed my dedication and promoted me repeatedly until I became his executive assistant. The pay was good, the hours flexible enough for a single parent, but few people knew what I actually did. To most, I was just another office worker, a cog in the corporate machine. The truth was more complex. Alex valued my organizational skills and attention to detail, but also my perspective. "You see things differently, James," he'd told me once after I'd reorganized a chaotic project timeline. "You find solutions where others see only problems." It was the first genuine compliment I'd received in years, and I'd held onto it like a talisman during difficult days. The gymnasium was transformed with twinkling lights and banners celebrating the class of 2006. I stood at the entrance, clutching my name tag, fighting the urge to turn around and drive back to the safety of my apartment. The familiar scent of floor wax and faded perfume transported me back to awkward dances and failed attempts at basketball glory. I had been invisible in high school, not popular enough to be noticed, not troubled enough to be notorious. Just average James Miller, the guy whose yearbook photo people squinted at, trying to place. "James Miller? Is that really you?" I turned to see Tyler Matthews, former quarterback and current car dealership owner according to his LinkedIn profile. His handshake was too firm, his smile too wide, his cologne too strong. 20 years had added weight to his frame and reduced the hair on his head, but his confidence remained intact. "Still in town, huh? What are you up to these days?" Before I could answer, Vanessa appeared at his side, champagne flute in hand. She looked exactly as I remembered, perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive dress, calculating eyes that assessed my worth in seconds and found it lacking. "Oh, James still works some office job," she said dismissively, as if we'd discussed my career recently instead of communicating solely through terse emails about Emma's schedule. "Nothing exciting." The familiar shame crept up my neck. 5 years of therapy hadn't prepared me for this moment, the casual cruelty, the dismissal of my existence, the way she could still make me feel small with just a few words. "Actually," I started, but Vanessa continued, addressing the growing circle around us. "You know, James always lacked vision. That's why we couldn't work out." She sipped her champagne, her wedding ring, larger and more ostentatious than the one I had given her, catching the light. "Did you know he turned down a business opportunity with my father? Could have been set for life, but he was too proud." What she didn't mention was that her father's opportunity involved cooking books for his failing company. I had refused, and she never forgave me for choosing integrity over wealth. The subsequent investigation and her father's eventual plea deal had vindicated my decision, but by then, Vanessa had already moved on to greener pastures. "Some of us value honesty," I said quietly, finding my voice at last. Vanessa's laugh was like glass breaking. "Honesty doesn't pay private school tuition, James. How is Emma doing in that public school, by the way? Still struggling with math?" The mention of our daughter ignited something in me. Emma wasn't struggling, she was thriving, despite Vanessa's absence from her life. Her last report card had been all A's, and her science teacher had suggested advanced placement for next year. But before I could defend our daughter, the gymnasium doors opened with a dramatic timing that seemed almost scripted. Alexander Donovan walked in, commanding attention without effort. At 55, he moved with the confidence of a man who owned not just the room, but the building and the land it stood on. His tailored suit probably cost more than my monthly rent, but he wore it casually, as if it were an afterthought rather than a statement. His salt and pepper hair was styled perfectly, his posture impeccable, his presence undeniable. The whispers started immediately. Everyone knew Donovan Enterprises. It was one of the largest tech companies in the country, with revolutionary patents in renewable energy. Alex had been on the cover of Forbes twice this year alone, his latest innovation in solar technology hailed as a game-changer for sustainable power. And he was walking straight toward me. "James," he said warmly, clasping my shoulder as if we were old friends rather than employer and employee. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." Confusion rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's smile froze, her eyes darting between us, recalculating. "Mr. Donovan," I managed, equally confused. In 3 years of working for him, Alex had never shown interest in my personal life beyond ensuring I had the flexibility to care for Emma. "I didn't expect to see you here." He laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "Alex, please. And I wouldn't miss your reunion. Not after everything you've done for the company." He turned to the stunned group, his charisma enveloping them. "James is being modest. He's not just my executive assistant, he's the reason our Solaris project succeeded. His innovation saved us millions and revolutionized how we approach sustainable energy." This wasn't entirely true. I had made a suggestion during a meeting that sparked a solution, but Alex was giving me far more credit than I deserved. I had simply noticed a flaw in the initial design and proposed an alternative based on something I'd read in a scientific journal. It was the kind of practical problem-solving I'd always been good at, nothing revolutionary. Vanessa's expression shifted from shock to calculation. "James never mentioned he worked directly with you, Mr. Donovan." "That's because James values actions over words," Alex replied smoothly. "Unlike some people I've encountered in business." The pointed comment wasn't lost on anyone. Vanessa's cheeks flushed, and she took a larger sip of champagne than was strictly elegant. As the night progressed, Alex stayed by my side, sharing stories of our work together, some exaggerated, some true. He spoke of my dedication, my intelligence, my integrity. With each story, I stood taller, the weight of Vanessa's dismissal lifting from my shoulders. "Remember when the Singapore deal was falling apart?" Alex asked a group of my former classmates who now hung on his every word. "James stayed up for 48 hours straight, restructuring the entire proposal. Saved a $50 million contract." That part was true, though it had been more desperation than brilliance that fueled me. Emma had been sick that month, and I needed the performance bonus to cover her medical bills. Or the time he identified the critical flaw in our battery design that everyone else missed. Alex continued, clapping me on the back. "Pure genius. That's why I keep him close, he sees what others don't." By the time we reached the buffet table, I was dizzy from the transformation. People who had barely glanced at me earlier now sought my attention, asking about my work, my insights on the market, my thoughts on the future of renewable energy. Vanessa hovered at the periphery, her expression a complex mixture of disbelief and reevaluation. During a quiet moment at the bar, I had to ask, "Why are you doing this, Alex?" He sipped his whiskey thoughtfully, his eyes scanning the room with the practiced assessment of someone who had spent a lifetime reading people. "Two reasons. First, everything I said is true, you are valuable to the company, even if you don't see it. Second," he paused, swirling the amber liquid in his glass, "I know what it's like to be underestimated." For the first time, I saw beyond the billionaire facade to the man beneath. Alex had started with nothing, building his empire from a garage startup. He had faced his share of doubters and critics, people who dismissed his ideas as impractical or impossible. His success hadn't come overnight but through years of persistence and belief in his vision. "Success isn't about impressing people who didn't believe in you," he continued, his voice taking on a reflective quality I'd never heard before. "It's about proving something to yourself. You've done that, James. You raised an amazing daughter while building a career. That's worth more than any bank account." I thought about Emma, about her resilience and kindness despite the upheaval of her early years. I thought about the home we'd built together, modest but filled with love and laughter. And I thought about my work, which had become more than just a paycheck but a place where I could contribute something meaningful. "Thank you," I said simply, the words inadequate but sincere. Alex nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Now, let's circulate. I believe your ex-wife is trying very hard to pretend she's not watching our every move." Later that night, Vanessa cornered me by the photo display. Her confidence had returned, along with a familiar calculating look that I once mistook for affection. She stood too close, her perfume, still the same expensive brand, bringing back memories I thought I'd buried. "I may have misjudged you, James," she said, touching my arm in a gesture that once would have made my heart race. "Perhaps we should talk sometime. For Emma's sake." The old me would have jumped at this opening, desperate for her approval, hungry for any crumb of attention she might offer. But standing there, surrounded by faded photographs of our younger selves, I realized I no longer needed it. "Emma is doing wonderfully," I said, stepping back slightly. "She's top of her class in science, plays violin in the orchestra, and volunteers at the animal shelter every weekend. She's kind, intelligent, and strong, everything I could hope for in a daughter." "Our daughter," Vanessa corrected, a hint of irritation breaking through her pleasant facade. "No," I said firmly, surprising myself with my conviction. "You gave up that right when you missed her last 5 birthdays. When you chose your new life over being present for hers. She's my daughter, and we're doing just fine without you." Vanessa's eyes widened, unused to this version of me, the one who didn't bend to her will or seek her validation. "James, be reasonable. I've been busy building my life with Richard. You know how demanding his political career is. And I've been busy being a parent," I replied, keeping my voice level despite the anger simmering beneath. "It's not a part-time job, Vanessa. It's not something you do when it's convenient or when it makes you look good." Her expression hardened. "You've changed." "No," I said, the realization dawning as I spoke. "I'm exactly who I've always been. You just never bothered to see it." I walked away then, leaving her among the ghosts of our shared past. For the first time since our divorce, I didn't look back to see if she was watching. The drive home was quiet, my mind replaying the evening, the initial humiliation, Alex's unexpected appearance, the gradual shift in how people treated me, and finally, my confrontation with Vanessa. When I pulled into our modest driveway, the porch light was on, and Emma was waiting up despite my instructions to go to bed. "How was it?" she asked eagerly, still in her pajamas covered with cartoon cats, her hair mussed from lying on the couch. Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor who had watched her, was snoring softly in the armchair. I smiled, truly smiled for the first time that day. It was educational. "Did you see Mom?" Emma tried to sound casual, but I heard the undercurrent of longing in her voice. Despite everything, she still missed the mother who had chosen to become a distant figure in her life. The question hung between us. Emma rarely mentioned Vanessa anymore, having learned early that the subject brought pain. "I did," I said carefully, sitting beside her on the couch. "She hasn't changed much." Emma nodded, understanding more than a 14-year-old should. "And did you show them all how awesome you are?" I laughed, pulling her into a hug. "I think I did, kiddo. I think I did." After putting Emma to bed and thanking Mrs. Rodriguez, I sat at our small kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea and processing the evening. The reunion had been a revelation, not because of how others saw me, but because of how I had finally begun to see myself, not through Vanessa's dismissive lens or even through Alex's generous one, but through my own eyes. The next morning, my phone rang early. It was Alex. "I hope I didn't overstep last night," he said without preamble, his voice carrying the slight gruffness of someone who wasn't used to questioning his actions. "Not at all. Thank you for what you did." "Good, because I meant what I said about the Solaris project. Your insight was valuable, and I'd like you to head the next phase. It comes with a promotion, of course. Vice President of Innovation." I nearly dropped the phone, certain I had misheard. "But I don't have the qualifications, I don't even have an engineering degree." "You have exactly what I need: integrity, creativity, and determination. The rest can be learned." He paused, and I could almost see him leaning forward in his office chair, intense and focused. "Think about it.